Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we completed till verse number 13 or 14? I think 14.
I thought we were supposed to start 14 today. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, Mataji.
Okay. Yeah, it could be, yeah, because my bookmarks is on 14. So it could be 14, yeah, probably, yeah. Okay. So anybody remembers anything from this?
It was describing how we should meditate on the Lord, beginning with the feet and moving upwards, and how the impersonalists or voidists, they're not recommended to meditate on the personal form, but rather the Virat Rupa.
Yeah, only keeping the body and the soul together, that kind of work one should do. And it was giving example of like how if the nature has already provided us with the things, so we should just use those things, like the arm is there instead of getting a pillow. So basically the thing is that we should not waste our energy, human energy, in acquiring things which are actually not necessary, right?
Yes.
And how in the beginning the chapter began with the Lord Brahma, even just because the anybody who is born, there is a defect of forgetfulness, right? Even Lord Brahma, what to speak of us. And how was he able to regain, how to create the whole creation again, was by meditating on Virat Rupa, right? And also we heard that that in Vedic scriptures, in the Vedas, there are fruitive activity and all those kind of things which are bewildering are also given. So, but one should actually not get distracted by those flowery words of the Vedas, right? We heard that. So only thing is we should work only towards acquiring the minimal necessities, right? And when whatever nature has provided, we should try to fulfill our needs in that instead of endeavoring too much. And actually, and that is, and the protection is coming from the Lord only, right? So, yeah. Yeah, and like we heard about meditating on the super soul in the heart, and there was a form described which was like what Janardhan, right? That was the common form, but according to the bhava of the devotee, the Lord appears in different forms in order to reciprocate with his devotees, right? Yes. And how we heard the different features of the Lord gives different kind of benedictions. We heard about the form of the Lord, like the smiling face and the garments of the Lord and his eyes, his smiling glances, right? Which gives benediction to the living entities. And how his lotus feet are in the yogis who meditate on the super soul in their heart. The Lord's lotus feet appear in their heart, on their lotus of their heart, right? Yeah. And also that his pastimes and his smiling face, they are actually the benedictions to the whoever does meditation on those. That is a benediction to the to those people who do meditate on his lotus feet or his pastimes, right? Anyways, because whatever, because he is transcendental, and if we meditate on the transcendental, then we rise above the miseries that we face due to the three modes of material nature. And then the beginning from the lotus feet, one should meditate on the Supreme Lord. Okay, so let us now move on to verse number 14. Someone would like to read? Let me share my screen. Oops, 1 second. Someone start reading while I'm pulling the.
I can read, Mataji.
Go ahead, Prabhu.
Thank you. Yavanaya jeta parvares asmin visvesvare drastari bhakti yoga tavat stavya purusasya rupam kriyavasane pravyata smareta. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. His Divine Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Unless the gross materialist develops a sense of loving service unto the Supreme Lord, the seer of both the transcendental and the material worlds, he should remember or meditate upon the universal form of the Lord at the end of his prescribed duties. Purport. The Supreme Lord is the seer of all worlds, both material and transcendental. In other words, the Supreme Lord is the ultimate beneficiary and enjoyer of all worlds, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 5.29. The spiritual world is a manifestation of his internal potency, and the material world is the manifestation of his external potency. The living entities are also his marginal potency, and by their own choice, they can live either in the transcendental or material world. The material world is not a fit place for living entities because they are spiritually one with the Lord. And in the material world, the living entities become conditioned by the laws of material world. The Lord wants all living entities who are his parts and parcels to live with him in the transcendental world and for enlightening conditioned souls in the material world. All the Vedas and the revealed scriptures are there expressly to recall the conditioned souls back home, back to Godhead. Unfortunately, the conditioned living entities, although suffering continuously the threefold of miseries of conditioned life, are not very serious about going back to God. It is due to their misguided way of living, complicated by sins and virtues. Some of them who are virtuous by deeds begin to re-establish the lost relation with the Lord, but they are unable to understand the personal feature of the Lord. The real purpose of life is to make contact with the Lord and be engaged in his service. That is the natural position of the living entities. But those who are impersonalists and are unable to render any loving service to the Lord have been advised to meditate upon the impersonal feature, the Virat Rupa, or the universal form. Some way or the other, one must try to re-establish one's forgotten relationship with the Lord if one at all desires to gain real happiness in life and to reclaim his natural, unfettered condition. For the less intelligent beginners, meditation on the impersonal feature, the Virat Rupa, or the universal form of the Lord, will gradually qualify one to rise to the personal contact. One is advised herewith to meditate upon the Virat Rupa specified in the previous chapters in order to understand how the different planets, seas, mountains, rivers, birds, beasts, human beings, demigods, and all that we can conceive are but different parts and beings of the Lord's Virat form. This sort of thinking is also a type of meditation on the absolute truth. And as soon as such meditation begins, one develops one's godly qualities, and the whole world appears to be a happy and peaceful residence for all the people of the world. Without such meditation on God, either personal or impersonal, all good qualities of the human being become covered with misconceptions regarding his constitutional position. And without such advanced knowledge, the whole world becomes a hell for the human being. Haribol.
Hari Bol. Prabhu, you want to say something?
Yes, again, Mataji, Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, somehow or other, we must come attracted to the Lord. If you're fortunate enough to get to be attracted to the direct personal form, that's best. Otherwise, the voidis and the impersonalists, at least they should meditate on the Virat Rupa, and then eventually they can rise to the personal form. But the important thing is somehow or other we should get connected to the Lord, because we belong to His spiritual potency. Although we are in the marginal potency, but we belong to the superior energy. Otherwise, we serve the inferior energy.
Yeah.
That's one thing I have to say.
Yeah. I was just thinking. So, like Srila Prabhupada in the purport is mentioning about that we should cultivate that meditation and relationship with the personal form. So just if we imagine ourselves, like let's say, none of us can live just by ourselves alone with the things around us, right? Unless and until there is a person whom we communicate with and share our thoughts with and all, it won't be easy for us, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that is what, like, because we are persons, like a person can have emotions and a person can have exchanges, so there has to be on the other side also there a person, right? We cannot just, means if we consider the Lord as just energy, meaning the things around which is kind of energy, right? So and then Srila Prabhupada is saying that until and unless we have developed the sense of loving relationship, loving service, so until then, in the verse also it says that one should remember or meditate upon the universal form, meaning seeing the Supreme Lord in all the things around us, right? Until one gets that, and by doing that, one will be able to actually one will be able to revive that mood of service, because if we see everything is belonging to Krishna, so that is what in the purport also Srila Prabhupada says, that one is advised here with to meditate upon the Virat Rupa specified in the previous chapters in order to understand how the different planets, seas, mountains, rivers, birds, beasts, human beings, demigods, and all that we can conceive are but different parts and limbs of Lord's Virat form. The sort of thinking is also a type of meditation on the absolute truth. And as soon as, because we are remembering the Lord at that time, that's how. And as soon as such meditation begins, one develops one godly qualities and the whole world appears to be happy and peaceful, because then one will not look at the things to exploit them, right? That will also happen. And in one sentence here, Srila Prabhupada says, the real purpose of life is to make contact with the Lord and be engaged in his service. So that is the purpose of human form of life. And if one materialist who doesn't have any conception of the personal form, that can be done through the Virat Rupa. All right, so should we move on?
Can I read?
And also, one more, yeah, Mataji, 1 second. One more thing Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport is that the Lord wants all living entities who are his parts and parcel to live with him in the transcendental world and for enlightening conditioned souls in the material world. All the Vedas and the revealed scriptures are there expressly to recall the combined soul, conditioned soul back home, back to world. So generally, when we chant, we hear many times in different lectures that chanting is service. So how is chanting a service is because the Lord wants us to be back, like, because the parents always want the children to be back to them and live with them peacefully and happily. So same way Krishna, the Supreme Father, also wants us back more than we want to go back. We think that here we can find happiness in some way in this material world, but we cannot. And the Lord knows that we cannot find happiness in this material world because we become conditioned in here. So how chanting is a service? Because the holy name is non-different than Krishna, and it is kind of we are calling his name back. So because the Supreme Lord wants us to be back, this chanting is the way to go back. So basically we are fulfilling Krishna's desire to go back to him, right? That is what I was sharing the other day, how Shripada Indra Prabhu speaks about, right? And I was also hearing today something, and there he says that um, you know, there can be like people play to get some kind of, acknowledgement or respect or something, the Sankirtan, but actually it is for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. Unless and until it is for the pleasure of the Lord, it is not Shuddhanam. That's what he said. Yeah. All right. So let's go on to the next verse. Someone wants to read?
I can read Mataji.
Yeah, go ahead, Mataji.
Thank you. Sthiram sukham chasanam asthito yatir yada jignasur imam angalokam kale cha dese cha manona sajjeta pranama niyachena manasa jita suha. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. O King, whenever the yogi desires to leave this planet of human beings, he should not be perplexed about the proper time or place, but should comfortably sit without being disturbed, and regulating the life should control the senses by the mind. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita 8.14, it is clearly stated that a person who is totally engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord and who constantly remembers Him at every step easily obtains the mercy of the Lord by entering into His personal contact. Such devotees do not need to seek an opportune moment to leave the present body. But those who are mixed devotees, alloyed with fruitive actions or empirical philosophical speculation, require an opportune moment for quitting this body. For then the opportune moments are stated in Bhagavad Gita 8.23 to 26. But these opportune moments are not as important as one's being a successful yogi who is able to quit his body as he likes. Such a yogi must be competent to control his senses by the mind. The mind is easily conquered simply by engaging it at the lotus feet of the Lord. Gradually, by such service, all the senses become automatically engaged in the service of the Lord. That is the way of merging into the Supreme Absolute. Hare Krishna.
Mataji, Hari Bol. You want to say something?
Yeah, so here Srila Prabhupada said the transcendentalists who they do the loving service of the Lord, so they are always contact with the Supreme Lord. So when they leave their body, they don't have to see the like auspicious moment or anything because they are always contact with the Lord. But the persons who are the mixed devotees who are all, engaged in the fruitive actions or philosophical speculation, they have to when they quit their body, they have to see the auspicious time. But the successful yogis, because they are always meditating upon the Supreme Lord and they control their mind by the senses, so they are automatically they are controlling their senses. Thus, they are always engaged in the loving service of the Lord.
Yeah. So this section from 15 to 21 is actually practice and process of leaving of an advanced yogi, like how advanced yogi leaves the body, remembering the Supreme Lord. So the essence of this purport is that how to control the mind is by engaging it at the lotus feet of the Lord, right? And in act of instruction also, the first text is Vacha Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Udarupastha Vegam. So Manasa Vegam, there Srila Prabhupada says, only way to control the mind is to fix it on the lotus feet of the Lord. And what does that mean? to fix the mind on the lotus feet of the Lord, always thinking, how can I serve and please the Supreme Lord? How can I fulfill the instruction of my spiritual master? So that is the only way to control the mind, because mind always has to think. And if we don't focus it on the positive, then it is going to wander around in the negative things, which are not good for our bhakti, right? So, okay, let's move on to verse number 16. Someone would like to read?
I can read, Mataji.
All right. Thank you, Prabhu.
Manaswa buddhaya malaya niyamya kshetragya etam ninietamatmini atmanam atmani avarudhya dhiro labdho pashantir virameta kritaya. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah.
Thereafter, the yogi should merge his mind by his unalloyed intelligence into the living entity and then merge the living entity into the super self. And by doing this, the fully satisfied living entity becomes situated in the supreme stage of satisfaction so that he ceases from all activities. The functions of the mind are thinking, feeling, and willing. When the mind is materialistic or absorbed in material contact, it acts for material advancement of knowledge, destructively ending in discovery of nuclear weapons. But when the mind acts under spiritual urge, it acts wonderfully for going back home, back to Godhead, for life in complete bliss and eternity. Therefore, the mind has to be manipulated by good and unalloyed intelligence. Perfect intelligence is to render service unto the Lord. One should be intelligent enough to understand that the living being is, in all circumstances,
Hare Krishna.
Sorry, Mataji, I don't know how I got muted.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I don't know.
So I don't know where
Yeah, here. One should be intelligent enough.
One should be intelligent enough to understand that the living being is, in all circumstances, a servant of the circumstances. Every living being is serving the dictates of desire, anger, lust, illusion, insanity, and enviousness, all materially affected. But even while executing such dictations of different temperaments, he is perpetually unhappy. When one actually feels this and turns his intelligence to inquiring about it from the right sources, he gets information of the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Instead of serving materially for the above-mentioned different humors of the body, the living entity's intelligence then becomes free from the unhappy illusion of the materialistic temperament, and thus, by unalloyed intelligence, the mind is brought into the service of the Lord. The Lord and his service are identical, being on the absolute plane. Therefore, the unalloyed intelligence and the mind are merged into the Lord, and thus the living entity does not remain a seer himself, but becomes seen by the Lord transcendentally. When the living entity is directly seen by the Lord dictates to him according to his desire. And when the living entity follows him perfectly, the living entity ceases to discharge any other duty for his illusory satisfaction. In his pure, unalloyed state, the living being attains the stage of full bliss, labdho pashanti, and seizes all material hankerings. Hari Bol.
You
So
want to say something?
Yeah. So here it said that after fixing his mind is in the last purpose we translation we heard that is controlling the senses. Here it's further extending that he should merge completely his mind into the Supreme Soul. And then when he does that, he'll feel supreme satisfaction because he's not materially attached. And with like in this material world, when we are on the conditioned platform, we are hankering for so many things. We are attacked by lust, greed, anger, illusion, and all these the anarthas, and we keep looking for happiness, which is not there. It's just temporary, and we will always find we will be perpetually unhappy. But when we are concentrating and giving attention, merging completely into the, like our intelligence into the Supreme Soul, because Krishna is spiritual, and we are serving him. And since the Lord and his service are identical, we are going to be in that spiritual platform, and we will feel happy, and we will give up all material hankerings, and we will do what God wishes, and that will give us the real happiness, and it will all our material hankerings will stop.
Yeah, so very wow. I am mesmerized by Srila Prabhupada's way of writing this purport. So merging the self in the super self and merging the mind and intelligence in the living entity, what does that mean? It's not that impersonal merging or anything. It's like completely absorbed in understanding that we are. So this first sentence, merge his mind and his unalloyed intelligence into the living entity, means that completely getting detached from bodily conception of life and understanding oneself to be the spirit soul, not this body, and then merge the living entity into the super soul, means completely thinking of the Supreme Lord, absorbed in the thoughts and meditation on the super soul. That's what it means, right? Then only one can be fully satisfied and then situated in the supreme stage of satisfaction, ceases all other activities. So here in the purport, Srila Prabhupada here writes, therefore the unalloyed intelligence and mind are merged into the Lord, and thus the living entity does not remain the seer himself, but becomes seen by the Lord transcendentally. So this is something I was thinking of, like we talked about it many times, that how when we talk about going to take darshan of the deity, what does that mean? It's not that we are going to see the deities, but we are going to get the merciful glance of the Lord. Like Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that we should not desire to see the Lord, but we should act in such a way that the Lord wants to see us. Right? We should act in such a way that the Lord wants to see us. So that is how we should be. Like, for example, Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, they are like so humble, they would not even be enthusiastic to go in front of the Lord. The Lord would be eager to call them to see them, right? So they are so humble. They felt themselves to be so unqualified that they didn't want to go in front of the Lord, but the Lord wants to see them. So Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that when we should not aspire to see the Lord, but act in such a way that the Lord wants to see us. And here then what happens is when we don't become the seer, but the Lord becomes, we being seen by the Lord, then the living entity directly seen by the Lord dictates to him to act according to his desire. Then we are like the puppets, like Arjuna, Rishikesha, like Arjuna is completely directed by all his senses are completely directed by the Supreme Lord. So then Krishna dictates that, and then we will just keep acting. Like Srila Prabhupada says that these books are not written by me, but they are being dictated by the Supreme Lord himself, right? That's what he says. He would read his books, he would ask his disciples to read his books to him. So when one becomes a pure devotee, then completely everything they do is actually directed and dictated by the Supreme Lord. And when the living entity follows him perfectly, the living entity ceases to discharge any other duty for the illusory satisfaction. In his pure unalloyed state, the living being attains the stage of full bliss. So Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj. So here there was, in the previous version here, there was something about our identity also, right? that we are the constitutionally the servant of the Lord. And then Srila Gaur Govind Maharaj says that how can we become the servant of Krishna until and unless we become the servant of the Guru? How can we become the servant of the Lord? And then he says that one has to cry for Krishna, just like Dhruv Maharaj, he cried, and then only he got by becoming the servant of his Guru Narad Muni, and by crying for Krishna, he attained Krishna. So we have to cry. Then somebody asked, oh, my heart is so hard that I cannot cry. Then Maharaj says that, oh, if your wife dies, you cry for her, but you cannot cry for Krishna because you are materially attached. You are not attached to Krishna, you are attached to material things. That's why your heart is hard and you cannot cry for Krishna. So then he says, how old are you? He said 37. A 5-year-old boy Dhruva could cry for Krishna, and you are 37 and you cannot cry for Krishna. All right, so let's move on to the next verse. 17, someone wants to read?
I can read.
Sure.
Na yatra kalo nimisham para prabhu kuto na deva jagatam ya ishire na yatra satvam na rajastamascha nave vikaro na mahan pradhanam. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. In that transcendental state of labdho pashanti, there is no supremacy of devastating time which controls even the celestial demigods who are empowered to rule over mundane creatures. And what to speak of the demigods themselves? Nor is there the mode of material goodness, nor passion, nor ignorance, nor even the false ego, nor the material causal ocean, nor the material nature. Purport: devastating time, which controls even the celestial demigod by its manifestations of past, present, and future, does not act on the transcendental plane. The influence of time is exhibited by the symptoms of birth, death, old age, and disease. And these four principles of material conditions are present everywhere in any part of the material cosmos up to the planet of Brahmaloka, where the duration of life of the inhabitants appear to us to be fabulous, insurmountable. Time even brings about the death of Brahma. So what to speak of other demigods like Indra, Chandra, Surya, Vayu, and Varuna? The astronomical influence directed by the different demigods over mundane creatures is also conspicuous by its absence. In material existence, the living entities are afraid of satanic influence. But for a devotee on the transcendental plane, there is no such fear at all. The living entities change their material bodies in different shapes and forms under the influence of the different modes of material nature. But in the transcendental state, the devotee is gunatita, or above the material modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Thus, the false ego of I am the Lord of all I survey does not arise there. In the material world, the false ego of the living being trying to lord it over the material nature is something like the moths falling in a blazing fire. The moth is captivated by the glaring beauty of the fire, and when he comes to enjoy it, the blazing fire consumes him. In the transcendental state, the living being is pure in his consciousness, and such he has no false ego to lord it over the material nature. Rather, his pure consciousness directs him to surrender unto Supreme Lord, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita 7:19, Vasudeva Sarvam iti sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. All this indicates that in the transcendental state, there is neither material creation nor the causal ocean for material nature. The above mentioned state of affairs is factual on the transcendental plane, but is factually revealed in a transcendentalist knowledge of the advanced state of pure consciousness. Such transcendentalists are of two types, namely the impersonalists and the devotees. For the impersonalists, the ultimate goal or destination is the Brahmajyoti of the spiritual sky. But for the devotees of the ultimate goal is the Vaikuntha planets. The devotees experience the above mentioned state of affairs by attainment of spiritual form for activity in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. But the impersonalist, because of his neglecting the association of the Lord, does not develop a spiritual body for spiritual activity, but remains a spiritual spark only, merged in the effulgent spiritual rays of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord is the full-fledged form of eternity, bliss, and knowledge, but the formless Brahmajyoti is simply eternity and knowledge. The Vaikuntha planets are also forms of eternity, bliss, and knowledge, and therefore the devotees of the Lord who are admitted in the abode of the Lord also get bodies of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. As such, there is no difference between one and another. The Lord's abode, name, fame, entourage, etc., are of the same transcendental quality. And how this transcendental quality differs from the material world is explained here in this verse. In the Bhagavad Gita, three principal subjects have been explained by Lord Sri Krishna, namely Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. But one can reach the Vaikuntha planets by the practice of Bhakti Yoga only. The other two are incompetent in helping one reach the Vaikuntha Loka. Although they can, however, conveniently take one to the effulgent Brahmajyoti as described above. Haribol.
Haribol. Do you want to say something?
Mataji, very long one, but so it's saying that in the transcendental state, there is like no supremacy, and then there is that is even above the everything, even the time which is controlling the demigods and the demigods which are controlling other stuffs. So it's like so many things, Mataji. It's like Mataji, can you please explain it?
Yes, so Labdop Shanti, in the previous verse we heard Labdop Upshanti means one who has attained full bliss, right? And what was that full bliss? When the living entity is completely focused on the Supreme Soul and Super Soul, and it is seen by the Lord, and it is doing everything dictated by the Supreme Lord by his desire and not doing anything illusory. That is Labdop Shanti, right? So Labdop Shanti, then there is no supremacy of devastating time. So meaning then because they become completely transcendental at that time, right? So and that time even it controls the celestial demigods and the empowered ruler, everything that time control. In the material nature, the time controls, but for a person who has completely become absorbed in the Supreme Lord, for them even that is completely, it doesn't work on them, right? There is no supremacy and it cannot control them. Yeah, so and no mode of goodness, passion, ignorance, false ego, nothing actually work on them. So that is simple, right? Yeah, so that is the first part. So there is no influence of time. We see, right, how Srila Prabhupada, he would just, no matter which time zone he goes in, he will completely keep the same schedule and he will just rest for a few hours. For us, it is even hard to think of, right? And how does time influence in the material world? That we do get the birth, death, old age, and disease, right? So, but for these transcendentalists who are completely situated, so for them, nothing, like we hear the lives of Goswamis also. So there is no impact of anything on them. Yes. So even though it brings about the death of Brahma, even everything, but for a devotee, when one is completely dictated by the Supreme Lord, for them, they are fearless of death. They don't care. And like Parikshit Maharaj, he is hearing Bhagavatam day and night without eating, sleeping, nothing, right? Yeah. So, and yeah. So basically that is what this verse basically means. And in the second paragraph, Srila Prabhupada is describing about the two types of transcendentalists, which is impersonalist and the devotees. But for the impersonalist, it's just that they want to merge into the Brahma Jyoti. But for the devotee, because they are in that advanced stage, and they are actually reciprocating, they are feeling that reciprocation of the personal form of the Lord. They are engaged in the service of the Lord, so they are blissful. But for the impersonalist, because they neglect the association of the Lord, so they do not develop that spiritual activity basically, right? And they just want to, and then they have to fall down actually, because there is no bliss in, if one is not doing any, not engaging in any service or anything, there is no actual bliss. So only bhakti yoga, only by bhakti yoga can one actually go to the spiritual world, where one can be in either in Vaikuntha or Goloka planets. So essence is that when one attains that absorption in the Supreme Lord, then they don't even have any impact of the devastating time which controls the whole material creation, right? So that is the essence here. So I'm thinking for 10 minutes we can chant maybe for the
Yes, Mataji.
Yes,
all right.
please.
So let me stop.